about your background and what brought you into the auto industry.
So it's kind of an interesting story in that I am a third generation car dealer. My grandfather was a Ford dealer on the east side of Houston. He had 5 kids, and 4 of those became Ford dealers. So I grew up with my father being a Ford dealer in Tomball, Texas, and I wanted nothing to do with the car business growing up. So I went and got an engineering degree at Texas A&M. I fell in love with the car business during an internship while I was in college. And really, it was more about the opportunity that I saw in the business. Because I was aware of some of the aspects of the business from growing up in it, I felt like I knew what I was doing. The reality is I had no clue, but I felt like a know-it-all college kid, and we were going into each one of these different dealerships, one per week all summer long. And I saw 2 things. And number one, I thought these guys were doing a terrible job of running their business. And number 2, they were still making really good money compared to what a poor college kid thought was really good money. I thought if these guys are my competition, then this is the business I have to get into because I think I can do better than them. And that's really what got me into the business. Now, having said that, clearly having a family that was in the business provided some opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten any other way. And so it's kind of a mixture of those 2 that created my direction.
Can you tell me more about your role and responsibilities at Keating Auto Group?
So my kind of role and responsibilities of Keating Auto Group have changed over the years. When we had one dealership, I was, the chief cook and head bottle washer, kind of doing everything with a core group of people. I'll say I was extremely involved, basically being the GM up to the point that we had 5 to 7 dealerships. As we have grown through the years, we have had to grow our bandwidth through having additional people involved in the management of the stores. Today, we've got 30 dealerships, all in the state of Texas, 16 different brands, and it's a lot to manage. It's a lot to say grace over, is the way I like to put it. And I'm still intimately involved in the business, but I also have to be careful not to step on everybody else's toes who is in charge of various aspects of running our businesses. And so my daily roles and responsibilities look very different today than they did 5 years ago, which looked different than it did 10 years ago, which looked different than it did 15 years ago, and so on and so forth. Today, I am looking at a lot of reports. Today, I'm trying to give direction to our COO, our CEO, our CFO, and just trying to make sure that the ship is going in the right direction and that we are paying attention to the right priorities as we go along. I feel like the organization kind of looks to me for direction and leadership. I love it. That's what I'm doing these days.
How many rooftops does Keating currently have? What growth goals does the group have over the next couple of years?
So Keating Auto Group is made up of 30 dealerships, 16 different brands. Everything is in Texas. I often get asked the question of what's the growth goal? What's it look like? And I'll say that I don't have one. We've gone from 17 dealerships to 30 in the last 4 years. We've had tremendous growth, but my father was famous for saying, buying another dealership is not about having the money or the opportunity. It's about having the people to run it. And that is very, very true for us today. When you grow as much as we have over the last 4 years, it becomes much more of a challenge. Now, most of those stores were bought in, I'll call it early COVID, and anybody could be successful in the Disneyland years of COVID. It was really easy to be successful in the car business during those years. Now, as it's getting more challenging, some different issues are popping up as you look across different brands or different stores and how they're being run. I have to be a little bit more picky about how we grow and what that looks like. But there are plenty of opportunities out there to grow. We've got plenty of capital available to grow. It's just a matter of having the people to run the stores and also making good decisions as we look at the opportunities that we have. There is no goal. We're selling a lot of cars. We've grown a ton. We're having a good time doing it. We've been successful in doing it. And when a good opportunity pops up, I have a hard time saying no. We've gone from 0 to 30 in 22 years. Who knows what the next 22 years holds?
Talk to me about the value Keating Auto Group places on the phone. What is the phone's role in building customer service and supporting your goals for growth?
So I spend a lot of time, as I look at the management of our dealerships, I spend a lot of time talking specifically about traffic management. From my view, there are only 3 ways that a customer becomes an opportunity or becomes a customer. There's only 3 ways a customer or an opportunity reaches out to our stores. They either do it through the phones, they do it through the internet, or they do it by showing up at our front door. To me, it's pretty simple when you think about the fact that they only reach out to us in 3 different ways. I personally put a huge priority on our phone calls. The fact is we sell somewhere around, we're currently around 13 to 15% as a group average on the percentage of vehicles we deliver based on our internet leads. We're about double that on our phone opportunities. When we get a sales call, we're delivering anywhere from 25 to 28% of those opportunities become deliveries. I believe that the phone opportunities are some of the best that are available out there to be had. One of the biggest challenges with an internet opportunity is creating this 2-way communication. A lot of our customers will ask a question, but they're hiding behind the firewall, if you will. They're hiding behind the computer and asking the question. It becomes difficult to get on their same level and make that 2-way communication possible over the internet. That's the first goal of answering an internet lead, is creating this 2-way communication. The beautiful part about a phone call is we have a customer reaching out to us. There is immediately 2-way communication, which takes that piece of the puzzle out of the picture, and it makes that opportunity so much more valuable to me than an internet lead. As an example, we have a customer who is reaching out to us. They are the ones trying to create this 2-way communication, and the opportunities almost don't come any better.
Can you describe what your call management process looked like before using CarWars?
So I have been a big advocate of managing the phones since the beginning of time, since I first started in this business, almost even before there were internet leads. The older people might remember, let your fingers do the walking. That meant something different 30 years ago than it does today. That was the ad of the old Yellow Pages. And That's what people did back then. And so I've been a big advocate of traffic management, and that has meant taking care of the phones. That was a big challenge for me in the early years. We were one of the early adopters of recording phone calls as they came into the store. We were one of the early adopters of managing the effectiveness of our advertising by managing where the calls came from, those types of things. But the difficult part, so I employed a person whose 100% of their job was to listen to every call that came into the dealership and to grade those calls and to work with the salespeople on their performance in that. The interesting thing about recording the calls and then listening to those calls is that it takes just as long to listen to a call as it does to respond to a call or have a call. And it was so time consuming and so difficult and so boring, to just sit there and listen to phone calls all day long, grade them, and then to work with the salespeople. So it was very difficult, but it was so important to us that that's what we did. Our process prior to having Car Wars was that we had a full-time employee whose full-time responsibility was listening to those calls and grading those calls and working with salespeople. It was not very efficient, but it was such a priority for us that we didn't really know any other way to deal with it.
What level of reporting were you using to track phone management before Car Wars?
As we were, dealing with this traffic management and managing the incoming phone calls by this full-time employee who had that job, it was a very manual process. We still, to a certain degree, kind of subscribe to the idea that old school is a good school. And it was a very old school process. We were listening to the calls. The salespeople would each fill out a manual script, a manual call sheet. Anytime they took a phone call, they were responsible for filling out this manual sheet. And every time that our call management person listened to a phone call, they would fill out a physical phone sheet. It was a, check the box, very physical, manual type process. We put it all into a spreadsheet, an old school Excel spreadsheet, where we managed our own reporting. We managed our own performance by salesperson, tried to figure out who was really good on the phones and who wasn't. But it was a literal check the box, put it into the computer system, generating our own reports with a very manual system. Again, not very efficient, but effective, just super time consuming and super manual. But it was enough of a priority for us that we had to make it happen.
How did you find out about Car Wars?
I would say that I feel like I have been a customer of Car Wars, or a client, I'd say a partner with Car Wars for such a long period of time that I don't exactly remember how I became aware of what they did. But, compared to the process that I had in the early days, compared to the services I was using prior to Car Wars, it was night and day. And so, because I was personally so involved in this traffic management, or this idea of traffic management, and trying to make sure that we were doing the best job that we could with the opportunities that we received. When I learned about what Car Wars was doing and how they could help, it was a game changer for me. It was it caused me to want to get deeply involved in what they were doing. And that's the reason I say it's kind of, yes, we are a client, but I feel like it's more of a partnership because I got so deeply involved with what they are doing and how they could kind of take over all of the manual processes that we were performing in the stores.
What were some of the main challenges or pain points you faced before you turned to Car Wars, and why did you choose Car Wars versus other providers on the market?
Old school is a good school. I loved having someone listening to all the calls and doing the manual reporting, but it's so time consuming. It took so much energy and a full-time employee to manage our reporting and our performance on the phones that it became difficult for one person to do that long term. It's a boring job. We had a handful of people who were very good at it, but we didn't have people who wanted to do it long term, and it wasn't very efficient, even though it was effective. The beautiful thing about Car Wars, or what really attracted me to Car Wars when we went to it, was not just the recording. We had other vendors who would record the call, but the big game changer to me is that they were grading the call. They were listening to it. They were grading it. They were doing the reporting all at the click of a button in the stores. They were measuring things that we weren't yet measuring. They were handling all the pain points that we were experiencing, and they offered a much faster response, much more information, and I really felt like, wow, if we go to this level of understanding of what we are doing with these opportunities, we're going to be better. We're going to sell more cars. We're going to have happier customers. And that's really kind of why I jumped off into this long-term relationship with Car Wars. They were the only vendor that I knew of in the market that was really listening to the calls and grading the calls and offering the coaching and the reporting. There were lots of companies out there that were recording the calls and giving you some information on what calls came in. There was a small handful of vendors, very small handful of vendors, who would use AI or listen to the call enough to be able to tell you if you had a problem. But the level of coaching, grading, and reporting from Car Wars was so much better than any other solution that I could find on the market.
How did the challenges you faced impact your overall operations and customer satisfaction?
Early on, when we started recording phone calls, it was very easy for me to sit down at my computer, click on the recording, and listen to these phone calls. It was very easy for me to say, "Oh my gosh, we're getting, so many calls, and I'm so embarrassed at how poorly we are doing with the way we're answering these calls and the way we are either, the way we're asking for an appointment or not even asking for an appointment at all, the way we're handling with these phone calls. It doesn't take long of listening to what we were doing to say, oh my gosh, we'd sell twice as many cars if we did a good job on the phones. That's the impression I've always had. I'll say that we put a lot of effort to making sure that we do a good job on the phones. I place a high priority on those specific opportunities, and therefore, our people that are in the stores place a high priority on them. And still, even today, Yeah, golly, I listen to the phone calls and I'm embarrassed about how we respond to a significant portion of those opportunities. We're better than we were then. We're still not to the level that I would like to see us at. And what I would say is that early on, when I listened to those calls, I'd say, we'd sell twice as many cars. I've put in a full-time employee. I've put in all these processes and all these procedures, all this reporting, made this huge investment of time and money and energy into performing well on the phones. I know we have to have had better results as a result of it, but I never looked up and said, see, we doubled sales. The fact is we never doubled sales. We performed at a high level, but it's very hard to pinpoint exactly what the results were that we saw throughout this whole 30-year process of trying to figure out how to do well on the phones. I can't clearly say I sold 20% more cars, or I can't clearly say we have better CSI, customer satisfaction, as a result of that. I just know in my core that it's true. I know that we're doing a better job on the phones than we did before. It's hard to measure exactly what that means in terms of results, other than I know it has to help.
Can you provide an example of a situation where your previous call management solution fell short?
In the early days, where we really started focusing on the way technology was going to change our performance on our management of incoming phone calls. Back then, the new technology was that you could record every phone call. That was a big deal back then, and that was the new technology that's going to help us. It was a big deal back then. To record the call was a bigger deal than just hoping and praying that our people did well. As I've said, it's a big investment of time and money and energy to deal with all this massive data that is the recorded phone calls. I do believe that there was a big benefit that came out of all of that energy that poured into it, but that came from Keating Auto Group. That came from our people. That did not come from the vendor or the solution. All they did was record calls. And so therefore, they're falling short in terms of putting all the other responsibility of what to do with that data on us as a dealer. The big game changer for us when we went with Car Wars was Car Wars was willing and good at willing to deal with all the data that was there and good at dealing with all the data that was there, so that we could just respond to the reporting. We could respond with the grading and the coaching and all of those things. We can make our people better with the results of the data rather than trying to deal with all the data ourselves. It was a big difference maker between Car Wars and the other vendors that were available out there. And therefore, if it's available at Car Wars and they're not doing it, then they're all falling short compared to what's valuable to me in the market.